Welcome, everyone. I am absolutely thrilled you're joining me for this explainer today because we are going to dive into a truly game-changing framework. It's originally derived from the teachings of Louise Hay, and we're going to explore exactly how the internal and external dialogues we constantly maintain, usually without even realizing it, literally shape our lived reality. We're going to break down some incredibly profound concepts into clear, actionable steps so you can see exactly how to apply this straight to your own life right away. Okay, let's dive into our roadmap for today. We'll start off by defining the two conversations, then move into mastering your inner voice, unpack the three outer languages, discuss expanding how you receive, and wrap the whole shebang up with a daily practice.
All right, Section 1, the two conversations. Let's start right at the foundation.
The core premise of our source material is that we are perpetually engaged in two distinct but highly overlapping dialogues every single day of our lives. First up, we have the conversation with yourself. You know what this is. It's those quiet thoughts you repeat when nobody else is listening, the names you might call yourself after a mistake, and your private expectations. But concurrently, there is the conversation with life. This is what you actively notice in your environment, what you tolerate, and the choices you make. And here's the thing. Changing your life isn't just about doing 5 minutes of morning affirmations. It is about evaluating how these two concurrent conversations align while you are doing completely ordinary stuff, like washing the dishes, opening an email, looking in the mirror, or checking your bank account. Because if you claim you welcome prosperity but literally refuse to look at your finances, well, your choices are actively contradicting your words.
Which brings us nicely to our second topic, mastering your inner voice.
If we actually want to change our outer reality, we have to understand the mechanics of our self-talk. The fundamental rule here is that your mind needs a destination, not just a vivid description of the room you're trying to leave behind. Think about it. When you say, "I do not want to be unhappy anymore," your brain actually attaches to the very condition you're trying to escape. Your attention is still just circling on happiness. Instead, try saying, "I am creating a life with more joy." The mind loves familiar rooms, even the really uncomfortable ones, so you have to give it a brand new destination to move toward. This way, you're actively stepping toward joy and peaceful connection rather than just using your words to constantly fight the past.
Another absolutely crucial point is how we define ourselves during difficult seasons. I am statements are powerful, but they can accidentally become permanent instructions about your identity. Saying I am a failure turns a single mistake into your absolute essence. Conversely, saying one of my plans did not succeed accurately describes a temporary condition. An emotion or a tough season is not the complete story of your life, right? Your language needs to reflect that freedom to change and grow.
And that leads perfectly into this profound insight from our source material. A frightened mind does not become wiser because it has been insulted. Let that sink in for a second. So many of us use cruelty and shame as motivational tools, basically believing that if we just punish ourselves enough after a mistake, improvement will magically follow. But it doesn't. When your inner voice is cruel, your mind just becomes more afraid to look honestly at its mistakes. You end up hiding from challenges because failure just feels way too dangerous. Actually, scratch that. Kindness is what creates the safety required for true, honest responsibility.
Now, you might be wondering, how do we practice this kindness if we don't actually believe the positive things we're saying? Well, this is where we address the trap of toxic positivity. If you're terrified about an unpaid bill, standing in front of a mirror and screaming, "I'm enormously wealthy," is only going to make your body tighten up and reject the statement entirely. You don't have to force a wildly fake affirmation. Instead, you build what's called a bridge statement. A bridge gives you a completely safe way to move toward a new belief without triggering that internal conflict.
Here are the literal building blocks of that bridge. I am willing to, or I am learning to. Just hearing those phrases feels like a relief, doesn't it? Saying I am willing to create a more peaceful relationship with money opens a door your mind might otherwise keep firmly shut. These gentle phrases are incredibly powerful because they are truthful enough for your mind to follow along without any resistance.
Now that we've tuned up the internal dialogue, let's move on to Section 3, the three outer languages. This is all about the second overarching conversation, how we communicate with life without even opening our mouths.
Yep. There are exactly 3 specific, living languages of action that the universe responds to. Life isn't confused by a single bad thought you had this morning. Rather, it responds to the larger direction you repeatedly practice through these 3 specific channels. The first outer language is attention. This is the place where your awareness rests, and it reveals exactly what you're feeding your inner world. The mind notices what it has been instructed to seek. So, if fear becomes your underlying search instruction, your mind is going to become beautifully efficient at scanning every single conversation for disappointment. It will unfairly compare your most vulnerable private moments to the carefully curated successes of everybody else. You have to consciously choose where your attention lands.
The second language is expectation. This is what you quietly assume is going to happen before an experience even begins. The source text shares this brilliant analogy about two people entering the exact same room. The first expects rejection. So what do? They shrink, they avoid eye contact, and their withdrawal practically guarantees other people will give them distance, totally confirming their fear. The second person expects connection. They stay open, they meet people's eyes, they ask questions. Neither expectation controls the room, but it absolutely changes your posture, your perception, and ultimately what you are able to receive.
The third and final outer language is action. This is participation. It reveals what you are currently willing to support, and honestly, it's often the truest message you send to the world. Your words and your actions can easily contradict one another. For instance, if you say you want peace, but you revisit every single argument in your head long after people have left the room, you are actively participating in disturbance. Aligning your action doesn't require a dramatic overnight life overhaul. It can literally be as small as closing an anxiety-inducing shopping tab on your browser or simply declining a request that violates your boundaries.
But here's the absolute kicker about the language of action. It must happen in the present tense. Saying I will be happy when everything is resolved is simply postponing. That ties your happiness to future conditions and gives totally unpredictable circumstances total authority over your life. Instead, a present tense practice sounds more like, I permit myself to experience one honest moment of joy today. You've got to bring the desired quality into the present moment, because the present is literally the only place where an idea actually becomes a practice.
This brings us to a fascinating shift in perspective in Section 4, expanding how you receive.
We so often ask life for more, but then we look for the answer through a very, very narrow, restrictive opening. To expand how we receive, we really need to learn how to separate rigid forms from core essences. We often demand rigid forms, right? We want love from one specific person or success from one particular job title. But true expansion is remaining faithful to the quality of a desire while releasing the demand that it must arrive through one specific door. What you really want is the core essence, like mutual affection and safety, or creative freedom and fair compensation. When you focus on that essence, you allow life to deliver it through paths you might never have even considered.
A perfect example of this is prosperity. Prosperity absolutely cannot be reduced solely to a number in a bank account. It arrives in so many unexpected forms. It's having the time to rest without feeling hunted by your schedule. It's a sudden problem-solving idea, or having an honest friend who tells you the truth with kindness. Prosperity is physical energy, or even the discernment to just say no to a bad offer. Recognizing all these diverse resources really helps build your overall capacity to receive exactly what you've been asking for.
So, how do we make all of this stick? Let's move into our final section, the daily practice, and bring all these expansive, beautiful ideas right down to earth. We need to establish how to actually live this framework during an ordinary day. Here's a super simple, not elaborate daily routine you can literally start tomorrow. Step 1 is your morning intention. Just wake up and choose a coherent tone for the day, something like, today I notice support. Step 2, and I think this is the most important one, is the daytime pause. Before you make a choice, like chasing a toxic relationship or avoiding a great opportunity, just pause, take a breath, and check your 3 channels. What are your words, your attention, and your actions doing right now? And step 3 is evening reflection. Don't measure the day by massive victories. Just review small pieces of evidence that your relationship with life is changing. Now, as you do this, old language and negative thoughts are absolutely still going to appear. That is completely normal. But instead of obeying them or trying to paint pretty fake words over your reality, you can playfully translate them. Greet those returning negative thoughts with a little humor. When a terrible thought pops up, you can literally just say, "Oh, here you are again. Thanks for sharing." By doing this, you are translating helplessness into movement, refusing to fight the thought for an hour and simply giving your mind a new, better direction. Which brings us to our final, parting question for this explainer, and it's a big one. What happens when you speak to yourself as if your life is listening? Because the truth is, your mind is listening, your body is listening. I really encourage you to make your inner language a profoundly safe place to return to. Start applying this framework today.
Notice your attention, soften your expectations, and let your actions reflect the dignity that belongs to you. Thank you so much for joining me, and I challenge you to really listen to your own conversations today.